My sister had a baby despite her losing custody twice. She said, this time's different. But when I showed up unannounced, the baby was alone, covered in bruises. I took him, now I'm in court. And my sister's saying I kidnapped him. I sit stiffly in my chair, fingers clenched so tightly around my knee that my knuckles ache. Across the courtroom, my sister, Sky, dabs at her eyes with a tissue, playing the part of the grieving mother beautifully. The jury is watching her, some of them with sympathy. My stomach churns. It shouldn't have come to this. But Sky has always known how to twist reality, how to turn people against me. I should have known she wouldn't go down without a fight. The lawyer standing beside her, a man in an expensive-looking navy suit, adjusts his tie and turns toward me. Miss Hale, he says coolly, would you say you have a history of being overly protective? I swallow the lump in my throat. If you mean, do I care about my family? Then yes. He smirks, as if I've just handed him exactly what he needed. Isn't it true that your sister lost custody of her previous 2 children? And that you yourself attempted to get custody both times, but were denied? My jaw tightens. I glance at my lawyer, Mr. Patel, but he gives me a barely perceptible nod, letting me know to answer honestly. Yes, I say, but I was denied because the children were placed in state care immediately. I wasn't seen as a close enough guardian. The opposing lawyer paces in front of me, slow and deliberate. And when you found out your sister had another baby, you didn't congratulate her, did you? I grit my teeth. No, and you didn't offer to help her? Offer to support her as a sister? I did, I snap. I just didn't believe she was capable of change. He raises an eyebrow, then turns to the jury like he's just uncovered something big. So, you admit you had a bias against her from the beginning? I exhale through my nose, forcing myself to stay calm. He's trying to make me look bitter, like I had some personal vendetta against Sky and wanted to steal her child. But that couldn't be further from the truth. I glance over at Sky. She's hunched in her seat, shoulders trembling as she sniffles into the tissue. It's all an act. I know that look. I've seen her cry real tears before. This isn't it. I look at the judge instead. The older man watches us with a neutral expression, but I don't miss the way his fingers tap against his desk. He's waiting, so I take a breath, and I tell them everything. It started with a phone call. I was at work when my phone vibrated in my apron pocket. It was mid-shift, and the diner was packed, but something about seeing my sister's name flash on the screen made my stomach tighten. I hadn't spoken to Sky in almost a year. The last time I saw her was in a courthouse when she lost custody of her second child. I had stood there, watching as the judge ruled against her, listening to her scream, "This isn't fair," over and over again. I had wanted to feel bad for her, but all I could think about was that baby, born addicted to meth, trembling in a hospital crib, his tiny body suffering withdrawal before he even had a chance to live. And now, after all that time, she was calling me? I hesitated before answering. "Hello, Arya." Her voice was high, chipper, almost fake. I frowned. "What do you want, Sky?" She laughed like I had just made a joke. "Wow, no, how are you?" "No, I've missed you." I sighed, rubbing my temple. "Cut the bullshit. Why are you calling?" A beat of silence. Then she said it. "I had a baby." I nearly dropped the phone. She kept talking, her voice smooth and casual, as if she hadn't just dropped a BMB on me. "His name is Ezra. He's perfect, Arya. You have to come meet him." I couldn't even respond right away. My mind was racing, trying to piece together how this was even possible. How the HLL had she gotten away with this? How? I finally asked. How did CPS not take him? She scoffed. "Because I'm different now. I'm clean. I have an apartment, a job. I did everything right this time." I didn't believe her. Sky was a liar. A manipulator. She always had been. Every time she got caught in a mess, she had an excuse. She had reasons. Promises. And they were always empty. But a baby? A baby wasn't something I could ignore. "Where are you?" I asked. "Phoenix. Come visit. Please, Arya. Just give me a chance to show you." I should have said no. I should have hung up and moved on with my life. Instead, 2 weeks later, I was on a plane. I didn't tell Sky I was coming. I wanted to see the truth. If she really was different, great. If not, well, I wasn't sure what I'd do. When I pulled up to the apartment complex, dread settled in my chest like a rock. It was one of those places you just knew had seen better days. Cracked pavement, cigarette butts littering the sidewalk. An old man passed out on a bench near the entrance. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, harder. Still nothing. Then I heard it, a baby crying. I tried the doorknob. It was unlocked. When I stepped inside, my breath caught in my throat. The place was a disaster. Trash everywhere. Food containers stacked on the counter, the air thick with the smell of stale beer. And in the middle of the living room, lying on a dirty blanket, was a tiny baby. Alone, covered in bruises. I felt my pulse in my throat as I rushed to him. His little face was blotchy, his eyes swollen from crying. His diaper was so full it had leaked through his onesie. I scanned the room for Sky. The bedroom door was open, empty. No sign of her anywhere. Panic gripped my chest. I didn't think. I grabbed the diaper bag, stuffed in what little baby formula I could find, and scooped him up. I walked out the door. The lawyer clears his throat, snapping me back to the courtroom. "So you admit it," he says, eyes gleaming like he's already won. "You took the child without legal permission." I meet his gaze. I save his life. The jury shifts. The judge exhales slowly. Mr. Patel, my lawyer, stands. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit medical records proving that the child was malnourished and injured at the time of my client's intervention." The judge nods. "Proceed." Mr. Patel hands over the documents. "Additionally, we have testimony from doctors confirming the injuries were consistent with neglect." Sky stiffens. Her crocodile tears vanish. "No," she mutters. Then louder, "No, that's not true." But no one is listening to her anymore. The judge leans forward. "I will review the evidence before making my ruling." I close my eyes, gripping the edge of the table. I don't know what's going to happen, but one thing is certain. I will not let Sky hurt that baby again. The courtroom is suffocatingly silent. The only sound is the scratch of the judge's pen against his notepad as he takes notes. I steal a glance at the jury. Some of them look uncertain, others uncomfortable. My stomach twists. This case shouldn't be difficult. The evidence is clear. Ezra was being neglected. But I know better than anyone how easily Sky manipulates people, how she turns herself into the victim, twisting the truth until it's barely recognizable. And, judging by the sympathetic look one of the jurors is giving her, I know she's already gotten to some of them. Sky dabs at her eyes with a tissue, shaking her head as she lets out a shaky breath. She looks like the picture-perfect grieving mother, her dirty blonde hair curled neatly around her shoulders, her makeup done just enough to look effortless. But I know her, and I know those aren't real tears. "Miss Hale," her lawyer continues, stepping closer, "you stated earlier that you did not notify Child Protective Services before taking the child. Is that correct?" I clench my jaw. "Yes, but just a yes or no." I swallow hard. "Yes." His lips twitch like he's suppressing a smirk. "So, instead of alerting the proper authorities, you took matters into your own hands and abducted your sister's child without her permission." I grip the armrest of my chair. "I didn't abduct him," I say firmly. "I saved him." Sky lets out a soft, pitiful sob, lowering her head as if the weight of this trial is too much for her to bear. The lawyer ignores her theatrics and presses on, pacing slightly as he gestures toward the jury. "You claim you saved him, but let's look at this from a different perspective, shall we?" He stops and turns to me. "You, a woman who has never had children of her own, who has had a long, complicated history with her sister, suddenly discovers that she has a new baby, a baby you didn't even know existed until she called you." I stiffen. His voice lowers, calm and smooth. "Could it be that you simply assumed the worst? That maybe, just maybe, your bias against your sister led you to believe she was unfit before you even saw her with her child?" I grip my hands together to keep from snapping at him. "I didn't assume anything," I say, keeping my voice even. "I saw it with my own eyes. Ezra was alone. His diaper hadn't been changed in hours. He had bruises. We'll get to that." The lawyer interrupts smoothly. "But for now, I'd like to discuss your decision-making." He turns toward the jury again, walking toward them as he speaks. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a case of a mother harming her child. This is a case of a woman with a long-standing grudge against her sister. One who saw an opportunity and took it." I exhale sharply through my nose. The lawyer pivots back toward me. "Tell me, Miss Hale, did it ever cross your mind that you might be overreacting?" "Overreacting?" I repeat, my voice rising. "No, it never crossed my mind that I was overreacting because I found an infant alone in a filthy apartment, covered in bruises, screaming for someone to help him. I don't call that overreacting. I call that stepping up when no one else would." Sky's lawyer doesn't flinch at my outburst, but I see something shift in the jury. A few of them look more thoughtful now, like they're reconsidering things. I take a breath, steadying myself. "I understand that you're trying to make this look like a personal vendetta," I say. "But this isn't about me and Sky. This is about Ezra, a baby, a defenseless baby who was suffering, and no one was there to help him. So yes, I took him, because I couldn't live with myself if I walked away and left him there." The lawyer studies me for a moment, then glances at Sky before exhaling slowly and turning back toward his table. "No further questions, Your Honor." The judge nods. "Mr. Patel, your witness." My lawyer stands up, buttoning his suit jacket as he approaches me. He offers a small, reassuring nod before speaking. "Miss Hale," he begins, "earlier, my colleague mentioned that you had never had children of your own. Is that correct?" I hesitate before answering. Yes. But would you say you have experience taking care of children? I nod. Yes. I've helped raise my younger siblings. And I used to babysit for a living. I've taken CPR courses. I've cared for newborns, toddlers, you name it. Would you say you know the difference between normal bruising that a child might get from everyday activities and bruises caused by neglect or obesity? I nod again, more firmly this time. Absolutely. Mr. Patel turns to the jury. And just to be clear, what kind of bruises did Ezra have? I feel my throat tighten as I remember. Dark ones. Some on his arms, like he'd been grabbed too hard. A few on his legs. And one on his back that looked like an imprint of something. My voice catches, like he'd been hit with an object. A murmur ripples through the courtroom. Mr. Patel gives me a moment, then steps closer. And what was his condition when you found him? He was tiny. I say, my voice barely above a whisper. Too tiny. He felt fragile when I picked him up, like a doll. His diaper was so full it had leaked through his clothes. He was screaming, but his cries were hoarse, like he had been crying for a long time. My lawyer nods, then turns back to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to submit medical records confirming that at the time of his examination, Ezra was severely underweight, dehydrated, and had multiple untreated bruises. The opposing lawyer immediately stands. Objection, Your Honor. We have yet to prove that these injuries were caused by my client. The judge raises a hand. Overruled. I'll allow the records to be submitted. The papers are handed over to the judge. I watch as he flips through them, his expression unreadable. But when he looks back up, something in his face is hardened. Good. Maybe now he sees the truth. The judge leans forward slightly. Miss Carter, he says, addressing Skye directly for the first time since her testimony. She stiffens, blinking up at him with wide, innocent eyes. Where were you when your child was found alone? Skye shifts in her seat, pressing the tissue to her lips before responding. I was at the store, she says, her voice trembling. I just ran out for a few minutes to get some formula. I didn't think he'd be in danger. I feel my stomach twist. Liar. The judge looks unimpressed. And how long were you gone? Skye hesitates. I don't know. Maybe an hour. An hour. An hour where her baby was left alone in a filthy apartment, soaked in his own urine, covered in bruises. I tighten my grip on my chair, forcing myself to stay silent. The judge sighs and pinches the bridge of his nose. We'll take a recess before proceeding. The gavel slams against the wood. I exhale shakily as people begin standing, murmuring amongst themselves. My lawyer places a firm hand on my shoulder. We're getting somewhere, he whispers. But I'm not ready to breathe easy yet, because Skye isn't done fighting, and I know she has one last trick up her sleeve. As the judge steps away, the courtroom stirs with quiet murmurs. Skye immediately turns to her lawyer, gripping his arm, whispering something frantically. I don't know what she's saying, but I don't trust it. I stand up, rolling the tension out of my shoulders. Mr. Patel leans in, speaking in a low voice. Stay composed. We're ahead, but she's going to fight back. Hard. I nod, even though my pulse is pounding. I can feel Skye's eyes on me, but I refuse to look at her. I step outside into the hallway, needing air. The courthouse smells like old paper and coffee, and the fluorescent lighting is too harsh, too bright. I feel wrung out. My hands tremble as I reach for my phone. One new message. It's from my friend, Melissa, who's watching Ezra. He's doing okay. He ate a full bottle and fell asleep. Call me if you need to talk. I close my eyes, swallowing the lump in my throat. At least he's safe. That's all that matters. You shouldn't have done this, Arya. My whole body stiffens. I turn and find Skye standing a few feet away, her arms crossed over her chest. Her big, watery eyes are gone now. No more tears. No more fragile, grieving mother act. Just Skye. Cold. Calculating. You shouldn't have taken him, she says again, voice low, controlled. I grit my teeth. You shouldn't have left him alone. Her lips twitch. I was coming back. An hour, Skye, I snap. An hour alone in that disgusting apartment. And the bruises? The weight loss. What's your excuse for that? She rolls her eyes. Kids bruise all the time. I inhale sharply, trying to keep myself from lunging at her. They don't starve, though. They don't sit in their own filth for hours. They don't cry until their voices are hoarse. Skye smirks, but there's something underneath it. Something desperate. You're not going to win, she murmurs. I shake my head. This isn't a game, Skye. She steps closer, lowering her voice. You think they're going to let you keep him? You think the system is going to side with you over his real mother? I stare at her. You're not his mother, I say quietly. You gave birth to him, but you don't deserve to be his mother. Her smirk drops. Her eyes darken. You've always thought you were better than me, she whispers, venom dripping from every word. Always thought you were the responsible one, the smart one, the good one. But guess what? You're still alone. Arya. No husband. No kids of your own. Just a pathetic little life where you play hero for everyone else because no one actually wants you. The words are meant to cut me, but I don't let them. Instead, I let out a humorless laugh. You know what's funny, Sky? I say, stepping closer. You're right. I don't have kids of my own. I don't have a perfect life. But at least I'm not a monster. At least I'm not someone who brings a child into this world just to let him suffer. Her nostrils flare. He's my son. Not for long, I whisper. For the first time, a crack appears in her expression. Fear. It's quick, barely there, but I see it. She knows she's losing. Before she can say anything else, a bailiff steps into the hallway. Court's resuming in 5 minutes. I take one last look at Sky before turning and walking away. Back inside, the energy in the courtroom has shifted. There's tension in the air, heavy and suffocating. I glance at the jury. Some of them are looking at me differently now. More sympathetically, Mr. Patel leans in. Be prepared. She's about to pull something. I don't get the chance to ask what he means before Sky's lawyer stands up. Your Honor, he begins smoothly. I'd like to call a new witness to the stand. I frown. We were supposed to be done with witnesses. The judge raises an eyebrow. Who? The lawyer gestures toward the doors. Elliot Myers. My stomach plummets. Oh no. The doors open, and in walks Elliot, Sky's ex-boyfriend. I hadn't seen him in years, but the sight of him still sends a wave of nausea through me. He looks just as greasy and smug as I remember. Dark stubble on his jaw, a cheap button-down that's wrinkled and slightly stained. I glance at Sky. She's smirking. This is bad. Elliot takes the stand, swearing himself in before leaning back lazily in his chair. He looks completely at ease, like this is all some big joke to him. The lawyer steps forward. Mr. Myers, how do you know the defendant? Elliot shrugs. I used to date her sister. He jerks his chin toward me. I stiffen. The lawyer nods. And in your time knowing Miss Hale, how would you describe her? Elliot smirks. Controlling. Paranoid. Always in everyone else's business. I dig my nails into my palm. The lawyer paces in front of him. Would you say she has a tendency to overstep boundaries? Oh, definitely, Elliot says, nodding like it's obvious. She always thought she knew what was best for everyone. Wouldn't let people make their own decisions. She was always trying to take care of things that weren't her problem. I want to scream, but I can't. I have to sit here and let this happen. And in your opinion, the lawyer continues, do you believe Miss Hale might have exaggerated the situation with Ezra? Elliot lets out a breath, shaking his head. Look, I don't know much about the kid, but I do know Arya. She's dramatic. She likes to play the savior. I glance at the jury. I can already see the doubt creeping in. No, no, no. I turn to Mr. Patel, whispering. We need to discredit him. He has no connection to this case. Mr. Patel nods, already flipping through his notes. The judge looks unimpressed. Wrap it up, he says, rubbing his temple. The lawyer gives a short nod. No further questions. I exhale shakily as Mr. Patel stands. He buttons his jacket and steps toward Elliot, his expression unreadable. Mr. Myers, he begins, when was the last time you spoke to Miss Hale? Elliot leans back. I don't know. A couple years ago. And in that time, you haven't had any direct involvement with her, correct? Elliot shrugs. Not really. Mr. Patel tilts his head. So, just to be clear, you have not witnessed her interactions with the child in question? Elliot hesitates, then sighs. No. And yet, you feel qualified to make a character assessment on her ability to act in the best interest of child? Elliot shifts uncomfortably. I mean, yeah, I know her. Mr. Patel nods. And you also have a criminal record, do you not? Elliot stiffens. I nearly gasp. The lawyer frowns. Objection. Overruled, the judge says. Answer the question, Mr. Myers. Elliot glares. Yeah, so what? Mr. Patel doesn't even flinch. So, you have a history of illegal activity, but we're supposed to take your word on my client's character? Elliot's jaw clenches. The jury looks very interested now. I bite the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. Mr. Patel turns back to the judge. No further questions, Your Honor. I finally let out a breath. Sky's last trick just backfired. But I know this isn't over. The courtroom is buzzing again. Sky's lawyer looks pissed, whispering urgently to her, while Elliot slouches in the witness stand, glaring at Mr. Patel like he wants to start a fight. I don't care. Let it be mad. The judge sighs, rubbing his temple. Mr. Myers, you may step down. Elliot pushes up from his seat, muttering under his breath as he walks past me. His shoulder bumps mine, on purpose, but I don't flinch. I don't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Instead, I keep my eyes locked on Sky. She's pretending to be calm, but I see it, the way her fingers dig in her lap, the slight twitch in her jaw. She's losing control. Good. The judge clears his throat. Do either attorneys have additional witnesses or evidence to present? Mr. Patel stands. No, Your Honor. Sky's lawyer hesitates, then also stands. No, Your Honor. The judge nods. Very well. We will now proceed with closing statements. My heart hammers as Sky's lawyer steps forward. I brace myself, knowing this is his last chance to turn things around. And he's going to make it count. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he begins smoothly, walking slowly in front of them. We have heard many things today. We have seen documents, photographs, and medical records. But at the core of this case is something much simpler than legal jargon. He stops and turns to them, his voice softening. This is about a mother and her child. I clench my jaw. Sky lowers her head slightly, playing the part of the devastated mother once again. Her lawyer continues. Miss Carter made mistakes. She will be the first to admit that. But does making a mistake mean that she should lose her child forever? Does a mother deserve to have her son ripped from her arms because of an impulsive decision made by someone who has no legal authority over him? My fist tightened in my lap. He steps closer to the jury. Miss Hale made a choice. Not a legal one. Not a moral one. A choice based on her own perception of the situation. A choice that took a mother's child away from her. Ask yourselves, what would you do if someone took your child because they simply thought they were a better parent? I force myself to stay still, to not let my anger show, because I know what they're doing. He's shifting the focus, making this about me, about my decision, instead of about Sky's actions. Smart, but wrong. The lawyer steps back, offering a small, calculated smile. I trust you will see the truth. He nods to the judge. The defense rests. I let out a slow breath as he takes a seat. Now it's our turn. Mr. Patel stands, buttoning his suit as he walks toward the jury. His expression is calm, measured. Ladies and gentlemen, he says, voice steady. Let's strip away the performance, the theatrics, and the carefully crafted words. Let's look at the facts. He picks up a document from the table. Fact. Ezra Carter was found alone in his mother's apartment. He picks up another. Fact. He was found covered in bruises and suffering from dehydration and malnutrition. Another. Fact. Medical professionals confirmed that his injuries were consistent with neglect. He steps closer. The law exists to protect the vulnerable. And who is more vulnerable than an infant? This is not about a grudge. This is not about an overreaction. This is about a child's safety. I swallow hard, my throat tight. Mr. Patel glances towards Sky, then back at the jury. You have been asked to view Ms. Carter as a grieving mother. A mother who made mistakes, yes, but who loves her child. But I ask you, where was that love when Ezra was crying alone for hours? Where was that love when his tiny body showed signs of starvation? Where was that love when he was left in a situation that put his life at risk? A silence falls over the room. Mr. Patel takes a slow breath. You have a choice, he says quietly, to believe in the illusion that has been presented to you today or to see the truth. He gestures to me. My client did not take Ezra to punish his mother. She took him because she was his last hope. And now, she is here, fighting for him, because she is the only one who will. I stare at the jury, my heart pounding. Some look conflicted. Some look certain. I don't know if it's enough. Mr. Patel nods. The prosecution rests. The judge sighs. Very well. We will now move forward with deliberation. A murmur spreads through the courtroom. I grip the edge of the table, trying to steady myself. The judge dismisses the jury for deliberation, and as they file out, my entire body feels like it's vibrating with nerves. I don't know how long they'll be gone. An hour, maybe 2, maybe longer. I chance a glance at Sky. She's doing that thing she always does when she knows she's losing, picking at her nails, lips pressed tight, pretending like she doesn't care. But I know better. She's unraveling. Good. The bailiff announces a recess, and I step outside into the courthouse hallway, needing air. The weight of everything presses down on me. I rub my hands over my face, trying to ground myself. Mr. Patel steps beside me. You did well. I scoff. Doesn't feel like it. He exhales, crossing his arms. The jury heard you. They saw her for what she is. He nods toward the doors. Now we just have to trust them. I nod, even though I feel anything but trusting right now. A familiar voice cuts through my thoughts. You think you've won? I look up and see Sky standing a few feet away, arms crossed, her expression cold but her eyes wild. I don't answer. She steps closer. You think they're going to let you take him from me? Just like that? I inhale slowly through my nose. I think they're going to do what's best for Ezra. Her nostrils flare. You're such a self-righteous little BTCH. I tilt my head, letting out a small, humorless laugh. Funny. That's what I was about to say about you. She glares at me. You had no right to take him. You had no right to have him. My voice is quiet but firm. And deep down, you know it. Her jaw clenches. For a moment, I almost think she might lunge at me. But then she exhales sharply, shaking her head. Doesn't matter. The system's always on the side of the mother. You can fight all you want, but in the end, they'll always give him back to me. I step closer, lowering my voice. Not this time. She falters just for a second. Then she scoffs, rolling her eyes. Whatever. I'll get him back. She turns away, walking off like she's already made peace with her victory. I watch her go, my hands balling into fists. I have to believe she's wrong. The jury deliberates for almost 3 hours. It's the longest 3 hours of my life. By the time they return, my stomach is in knots. My palms are sweating. My heartbeat is so loud I can barely hear anything else. We stand as the judge takes his seat. The foreman, an older woman with sharp eyes, stands with the verdict slip in her hands. My breath catches as she clears her throat. In the case of the state versus Sky Carter, on the charge of child endangerment, we find the defendant. She pauses, looking up at the judge. Guilty. The courtroom explodes into murmurs. A rush of air leaves my lungs so fast I nearly stumble. Guilty. The judge raises a hand for silence before continuing. In light of the jury's verdict, this court rules that Ezra Carter will remain in the temporary custody of Miss Aria Hale until permanent guardianship is determined by family court. I barely hear the rest. My ears are ringing. We won. We won. Sky lets out a loud, sharp noise, half scoff, half sob. No, you can't do this. She whips toward her lawyer. Do something. But her lawyer just sighs, rubbing his forehead. He knows there's nothing to be done. She turns on me next, her face red, her teeth clenched. This isn't over. I meet her gaze, steady and unshaken. It is for you. The gavel slams down. The case is closed. Outside the courthouse, the air feels lighter. I stand on the steps, still processing everything. Ezra is safe. Sky lost. For the first time in years, I feel free. Melissa arrives minutes later, Ezra bundled in her arms. He blinks up at me, his tiny fingers reaching toward my face. Hey, little guy, I whisper, taking him from her, pressing him close. He's warm, solid, safe. Melissa grins. You did it. I nod, swallowing the lump in my throat. Yeah, I did. And then, for the first time since this nightmare began, I let myself cry. Sky doesn't go to jail. The sentence is light. Mandatory parenting classes, supervised visitation, probation. But it doesn't matter, because she loses all custody rights. Ezra is placed under my guardianship permanently. Sky tries to fight it for a while, dragging out legal battles, filing useless appeals. But the courts aren't on her side anymore. Eventually, she gives up, and just like that, the woman who swore she would never lose finally does. Years later, Ezra is running through the park, laughing as I chase him. He's bigger now, healthier, happier. He doesn't remember Sky, and honestly, I hope he never does. I sit on the bench, watching him play, feeling the weight of the past finally lift off my shoulders. I did the right thing, and no matter what Sky says, no matter how she tries to twist it, I won.